The kitchen had always been my sanctuary. It was the one place where the outside world couldn't touch me, where the scent of spices and warm meals wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. The soft hum of the stove, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, and the gentle simmer of broth on the fire. It was my little world, a place where everything made sense. That evening was no different. The sun had already set, leaving behind a soft golden afterglow that peeked through the kitchen window. A cool breeze slipped in through the open pane, rustling the sheer curtains as I worked. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards and the distant ticking of the clock on the wall. I had just finished cutting the last of the onions when I reached for the garlic. My mind was lost in the recipe, my hands moving on their own, years of experience guiding me through every step. A pinch of salt here, a dash of pepper there. Cooking was more than a routine. It was muscle memory, a rhythm I had danced to for years. Then, out of nowhere, a voice echoed behind me. "Auntie, you're still the best cook I know." I froze. The knife slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the cutting board. My heart jumped so violently that for a moment I couldn't breathe. That voice. That unmistakable voice. It was deep, yet familiar, carrying the same playful lilt I had known all my life. But it couldn't be. My nephew was thousands of miles away. He had left for college nearly 2 years ago, pursuing his dreams in another country. We talked on the phone sometimes, but his busy schedule meant that our conversations were often rushed, squeezed between his classes and assignments. The last time we had spoken, he had mentioned how much he missed home, how he longed for my cooking. But we both knew his return wouldn't be anytime soon. So how? My breath caught in my throat as I turned around, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. And there he was, standing in the doorway, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, wearing that same boyish grin that had always melted my heart. He looked taller, older even, but those eyes, those bright, mischievous eyes, hadn't changed one bit. For a moment I just stared, my vision blurring with unshed tears. My hands trembled at my sides. My brain screamed that this was impossible, that I must be imagining things. But my heart knew the truth. I gasped, my voice breaking. "Is it really you?" His grin widened. Who else would it be? That was all it took. With a strangled sob, I rushed forward and threw my arms around him, holding him so tightly I feared I might crush him. But I didn't care. I needed to feel his warmth, to make sure he was real, that this wasn't some cruel dream. He hugged me back just as tightly, his arms wrapping around me like they used to when he was a little boy. "I missed you, Auntie," he murmured into my hair. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I held him close, my heart overflowing with emotions I couldn't even begin to describe. "I missed you too, sweetheart. So much." It felt as if the years apart had melted away, as if time had folded in on itself, bringing us back to where we belonged, right here, together. I pulled back slightly, cupping his face in my hands. "But how? When did you get here? Why didn't you tell me?" He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I wanted to surprise you." And oh, what a surprise it was. I shook, my head still in disbelief. My nephew was home. After all this time, after all the months of longing, he was standing right in front of me, safe and sound. The soup on the stove bubbled softly, filling the kitchen with the familiar scent of home. But at that moment, I realized this was the real warmth I had been missing. Not the one from the stove, but the one that came from having the people you love right beside you. I wiped my tears and smiled, my heart finally settling. "Well, if you're home, then we have a lot to catch up on," he grinned. "That's exactly why I'm here." Little did I know, This was just the beginning of a night I would never forget. I couldn't stop looking at him. Even as I set a bowl of soup in front of him, my hands still trembled slightly from the shock. He was here. After 2 years of phone calls that never felt long enough, after missing birthdays and holidays, after watching him grow up through a screen, he was finally sitting at my kitchen table right where he belonged. He caught me staring and chuckled. "You're looking at me like I'm a ghost." I shook my head, smiling through my tears. "That's because I can't believe you're real." He laughed, that same warm, familiar laugh that used to fill this house every day. The kind of laugh that made the walls feel alive, that turned a house into a home. "I miss this," he said, picking up his spoon and taking a deep breath. The smell, the warmth, everything. It feels like I never left. I sat across from him, watching as he took his first sip of the soup. His eyes fluttered shut for a second, and then he let out a deep sigh. This tastes like home. My heart clenched. He didn't just mean the food. I could hear it in his voice, see it in the way his shoulders relaxed, as if he had been carrying a weight he didn't even realize. Being here, in this kitchen, was more than just a visit. It was a return to something he had been longing for. "Tell me everything," I said softly. "Start from the moment you got on that plane." He smiled, setting his spoon down, and for the first time that night, he let his guard down completely. He told me about the first months of college, how exciting yet overwhelming it had been, how he had to figure out everything on his own: laundry, groceries, managing his own schedule. He spoke about the new friends he had made, the sleepless nights before exams, the thrill of discovering new places. But then, his voice softened. "No, Auntie. No one tells you how lonely it can be." I frowned, my chest tightening. "Lonely?" He nodded, stirring his soup absent-mindedly. "I mean, I was surrounded by people all the time, but it wasn't the same. There were days when I'd come back to my apartment after a long day, and the silence felt heavy." I swallowed hard. I knew that feeling, that deep, aching loneliness that settled into the walls of a home when someone you loved was missing from it. "There were nights," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "when I'd close my eyes and try to remember the sound of your voice, the way you used to call me to dinner, the way you'd hum while cooking. I was scared I'd forget. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I reached across the table and took his hand in mine, squeezing it gently. "You could have called me sweetheart, anytime." He let out a small laugh, shaking his head. "I know, but it wasn't the same. I didn't just miss talking to you. I missed being here. I missed home." Silence settled between us for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than words, the kind that carried the weight of everything we had left unsaid. I took a deep breath and smiled, wanting to lift the heaviness in the air. "Well, you're here now, and I'm going to make sure you get so much love and food that you won't feel lonely for a second." His eyes softened. "I know." A small chuckle escaped my lips. "I still can't believe you surprised me like this. You were always full of tricks as a kid, but this one takes the cake." He smirked. "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet." I raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" He laughed. "No, but you should expect more surprises. I didn't come back just for a quick visit, Auntie. I came back because I needed to." Something in his voice made my heart swell with both joy and curiosity. There was more to his return than just a surprise. But whatever it was, I knew one thing, for sure. He was home, and I would make sure he never felt alone again. This night wasn't just a reunion. It was a reminder that no matter how far life took us, some bonds could never be broken. My nephew leaned back in his chair, a satisfied sigh escaping his lips. "I forgot how good your cooking is," he said, rubbing his stomach. "Seriously, Auntie, no restaurant in the world could ever come close." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Flattery. We'll get you extra servings, but I already planned on feeding you until you can't move." He laughed, that warm, familiar sound filling the kitchen like music. For the first time in a long while, this house felt complete again. He glanced at the stove, his eyes twinkling with nostalgia. "Are you making the soup?" I smiled knowingly. "Your favorite. You used to beg me to make it every time you had a bad day." His grin widened. "And you always did. It was a tradition we had for years, no matter what happened, whether he scraped his knee as a child, failed a test in high school, or had a rough day. This soup was his comfort. It was more than just a meal. It was a silent promise, a way to say, 'I'm here. You're not alone. Help me with the seasoning?' I offered, holding up the spice jar. His eyes lit up. "Like old times?" "Like old times." He sprang to his feet, rolling up his sleeves as if he were preparing for battle. "All right, what do I do?" I handed him a spoonful of broth. "Taste first. Tell me what's missing." He took a sip, humming thoughtfully. Needs a little more salt. And maybe a pinch of cumin?" I grinned. Good memory. As he sprinkled the spices into the pot, stirring carefully, I watched him with quiet admiration. When had he grown up so much? It felt like just yesterday he was a little boy standing on a stool beside me, barely able to hold a spoon without spilling. Now here he was, taller, wiser, but still the same in all the ways that mattered. "You know," he said, glancing at me with a smirk, "I actually tried making this soup in my apartment once." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And how did that go?" He groaned, dramatically. "Let's just say, it tasted nothing like this. I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe it was the broth, or maybe I just don't have your magic touch." I laughed, patting his arm. "Cooking isn't just about following a recipe, sweetheart. It's about love. The hands that prepare the food, the heart that pours into it. That's what makes it special." He smiled, stirring the soup with more care now, as if he finally understood. For a while, we worked in comfortable silence, the only sounds being the gentle bubbling of the broth and the occasional clink of spoons against the pot. It was a dance we had done so many times before. Him tasting, me adjusting, both of us sharing unspoken moments that meant more than words ever could. After a few minutes, I ladled some into a small bowl and held it up. Moment of truth. "Try it." He took a sip and closed his eyes, savoring it. A slow smile spread across his face. "That's it. That's home." My heart warmed. It wasn't just the taste he recognized. It was the feeling. The warmth, the love, the comfort. He set his spoon down, looking at me with quiet sincerity. "I really missed this. Not just the food, but this. Being here with you. Cooking together. Laughing. Just feeling like I belong." I reached out and gently brushed his hair back, just like I used to when he was younger. "You've always belonged, sweetheart. No matter how far you go, this will always be your home." He swallowed, his eyes glistening. I needed to hear that. The weight in his voice told me everything. He hadn't just come back for a visit. He had come back because he was searching for something familiar, something safe. And in this kitchen, with the warmth of the stove and the love in the air, he had finally found it again. The soup was ready, but more importantly, so was his heart. And as we sat down to eat together, I knew this was a moment neither of us would ever forget. As we sat at the kitchen table, savoring each spoonful of the warm, familiar soup, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was left unsaid. My nephew was smiling, laughing, reminiscing about childhood memories. But there was something behind his eyes, something distant. I knew him too well. He had always been an open book to me, even when he thought he was hiding. His hands fidgeted slightly, his eyes flickered downward whenever I met his gaze for too long, and there was a slight hesitation in his voice, like he was holding something back. I set my spoon down and folded my arms. "All right, sweetheart. Out with it." He blinked. "Huh?" I gave him a knowing look. "You think I don't notice? There's something on your mind. Something you're not telling me." For a moment, he looked like that little boy who used to get caught sneaking cookies before dinner. A guilty, hesitant expression flashed across his face before he sighed and leaned back in his chair. "I should have known you'd figure it out," he muttered with a small chuckle. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Talk to me, darling. Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." He exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "It's complicated." I nodded, staying quiet, giving him the space to gather his thoughts. After a moment, he looked up, his eyes filled with emotions I couldn't quite place. "Auntie, I didn't just come back for a visit. I came back because I wasn't sure where else to go." My heart clenched. "What do you mean?" He swallowed hard, staring down at his bowl as if searching for the right words. College was great at first. New experiences, new people, everything I thought I wanted. But after a while, I started feeling lost. Like I was just going through the motions, but none of it felt right. I listened intently, my heart aching for him. "I worked so hard to get there," he continued, his voice quieter now. "To make you proud, to make Mom and Dad proud. But somewhere along the way, I started wondering if it was even my dream, or if I was just chasing something because I thought I had to." Tears burned the back of my eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," he ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping into his voice. I kept telling myself it would get better, that I just needed to push through. But the more time passed, the more it felt like I was drowning. Like I was stuck in a life that didn't belong to me. I squeezed his hand again, my voice gentle. "And so you came home?" He nodded, exhaling deeply. "Yeah, I needed to be somewhere that made sense again. Somewhere that felt real." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The kitchen was filled only with the soft ticking of the clock and the lingering warmth of our shared meal. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "You don't have to have everything figured out right now. Life isn't a straight path. And sometimes stepping back is the bravest thing you can do." His eyes met mine, filled with uncertainty and hope all at once. "But what if I disappoint everyone?" I shook my head. "You could never disappoint me. All I want is for you to be happy, truly happy. And if that means changing direction, then so be it. Dreams can change. You can change." His lips pressed together, as if he was trying to hold back emotion. I was so scared to admit that. I smiled softly. "Well, you're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together." And just like that, something in his expression shifted. The tension in his shoulders eased. The weight he had been carrying for so long seemed just a little lighter. Home wasn't just about a place. It was about having someone who understood you, even when you didn't understand yourself. And no matter what happened next, I would always be that person for him. A comfortable silence settled between us. The kitchen, once filled with only the hum of the stove and the clinking of spoons, now carried something deeper, understanding. My nephew let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. I really thought coming back would feel like failing. I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. Taking care of yourself is never failing, sweetheart. It's the bravest thing you can do. He looked at me then, his eyes glassy with unspoken emotions. I just didn't know where else to turn. Everyone at school seemed so sure of what they wanted, so confident in their path. And me? I felt like I was walking in circles. I nodded, my heart aching for him. You've been carrying this alone for too long. He swallowed hard, blinking rapidly, as if holding back tears. I didn't want to burden you. Burden me? I repeated, my voice firm but full of warmth. Oh, sweetheart, you've never been a burden. Not once. Not for a second. You are family. And family means we carry things together. His lower lip trembled, and in that moment, he wasn't just a grown man sitting at my kitchen table. He was the little boy who used to crawl into my lap after a bad dream, seeking comfort in the arms that had always held him safe. A tear slipped down his cheek, and before he could even wipe it away, I stood up and pulled him into a tight hug. He didn't resist. He melted into my arms, burying his face in my shoulder the way he had when he was younger. I don't know what to do next, he admitted, his voice muffled against me. I ran my fingers through his hair, just like I used to. Then don't rush. You don't have to have all the answers tonight. You just have to breathe, to rest, to be. He pulled back slightly, sniffling. And you'll be here? I cupped his face in my hands, smiling through my own tears. Always. For the first time since he walked into my kitchen, I saw it. The weight lifting from his shoulders, the fear easing, the exhaustion being replaced with something gentler. Hope ruffled his hair, trying to lighten the mood. Now, before I get too sentimental, how about dessert? He laughed, wiping at his eyes. Auntie, you always have dessert. I winked. Some things never change. I pulled out his favorite, warm apple pie with cinnamon, the kind he used to steal bites of before it had cooled. The smell alone made him groan in delight. As we ate, something in the air shifted. Not everything was fixed. Not every question had an answer. But that was okay. Because he wasn't alone. Because he was home. And in this kitchen, with the warmth of a familiar meal and the love of family, he could finally breathe again. Because sometimes, the greatest comfort isn't a place. It's the people who remind you where you belong. Watch till the end for more heartwarming stories.